It's preparing. You can see it up in our Zoom going live. All right, excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay. And there we go. All right. And we are live. Fantastic. Okay. All right, ladies. Yes, I got it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. It looks like we're a couple of minutes early. That's okay. Welcome back. You all know who I am, Caroline Best of the Tao of Horsemanship. This is Everything Horses and More podcast. You know who my lovely co-host is, Lydia Primavera. Hi, Lydia.
Hi.
And we have back
Everybody.
another fabulous guest speaker today, Kris Newkirk. Hi, Kris.
Hi, everybody.
So we are so excited to have Kris join us again. I think this is our third podcast with you, if I'm correct.
Second.
That's it?
Yeah. Maybe we had an imaginary one together. Something, you know.
That is so cool. Maybe I dreamt it, or we're going to have another one for sure. Oh, wow. Well, welcome back. Okay. So today's topic, I cannot wait for this. This is so aligned with all of my students and me included, working with our higher, truer self to bring calm, confidence, and peace within. And that's perfect for this time of year. It's such an exciting time of year with the holidays, but it is also equally stressful in many ways. I think statistically, you would know more than me because this is your line of work with psychology, Kris, but statistically, wow, this can be a very depressing, stressful, traumatic time. We've lost loved ones. A lot of people feel alone or lonely. Amidst all of this, excitement and joy. So, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you for those of you that are not familiar with Kris. Okay, today, we're going to be recognizing, connecting to, and honoring our higher selves and its relationship to Christmas. So this is going to be pretty cool. Kris has been practicing for over 45 years in counseling and psychology with a specialization in psycho-spiritual crisis, trauma, and women's empowerment. Yay! Most recently, Kris has become a certified EMDR therapist. We spoke a lot about that in our first interview with you as a guest speaker, what that meant, EMDR. Therapists integrating EMDR with transpersonal therapies with a focus on addiction and spirituality. If you're looking for some inspiration and spiritual guidance this holiday season, I'm so glad you joined us. We will be diving in deep about connecting to our divine selves, spirituality, and finding peace. Yay. So welcome and thank you.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful summation. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, my dear, you lead the way.
All right. Well, I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you for inviting me, first of all. I want to say that when you introduced the topic or the possible topic, I thought to myself, how perfect for me. Because when I delve into this, of course, what I'm doing is I'm taking it's a self-evaluation. I'm taking a look at where am I with this concept or this reality of the higher self. Okay. So thank you. It was I've been on a travel for the last week as I've looked at what I want to talk about. I've been traveling. So what I want to talk about first is I want to talk about all of the different names that we give to the higher self or the true self, and maybe how could we define that in words, which of course is very difficult because this is a spiritual entity. All right. Yes. And so words, I don't know about you, but the words fail me. All right. When I start to try to describe it. Right.
Yes.
All
yes.
right.
It's an experience. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a unique experience for all of us, even if we are looking to attain the same kind of experience, the spiritual experience, it's so unique and depends on where we are within ourselves and the experience, who we share that with. It's profound. It is profound.
Very profound and very difficult to define because it is an experience. But for the nature of moving on, what we'll do is we'll try to use words to define this entity we call the higher self or the true self. So what other names can we use? I'm going to start with something that Tolle says, okay? He says, you are the alertness, the stillness, the presence that is listening, looking, touching, even speaking. So you are the alertness. You are the being behind the doing. You are that
beautiful.
Yeah,
beautifully.
Yeah, I really like that. And then there's consciousness or the awakened one. We call the true self the awakened one. Then there are those who call it the Christ within or the Christ self. Those who call it the Buddha within or the Buddha self.
Yes.
Then there's the divine one, which I just heard you say. Okay. This is the divine one, the true self, the higher self is the divine one. Then there's the wise one. Then there's the witness. And I particularly like that because that helps me to step back in to who it is I actually am when I'm witnessing what's going on in the external. The watcher, the big self, with big S, versus the little self. And we'll get into that a little bit today. Higher intelligence is one way people describe it. But when we describe it, what remains in this entity is the light of consciousness in which perceptions, experiences, thoughts, and feelings come and go. They just come and go. And that is the being that is the deeper, true I. And we sense this when we do certain practices, right? And now, one of the things that I find for me is that sometimes in experiencing this higher self, when I'm in that kind of awareness and alertness, it's easier to define it by what it isn't. I know when I'm an ego. I'm sure you've had that experience. The difference between being an ego, an egoic consciousness is what we call that. Versus
can you give us some examples of the ego so that I know we all know what that is and we're in the ego more than we're not, but please let us know how you define that.
Well, in 12-step philosophy, what we call it is easing God out. All right. The ego thinks it's separate from a higher self, separate from a spiritual, loving presence, separate. And it's how do I say this? The behavior of the ego, you can notice it, okay? Because the hitting force behind it is always the same. So when I think of my ego, it's the need to stand out, be special, be in control of things, need for power, for attention, for more and more and more and more and more. You can never get enough because it views itself as separate. And the interesting thing about the ego is it always needs enemies. It always needs an enemy. So we see ourselves as separate from people, where we're all one, of course, but we see ourselves as separate entities, and it's the ego that sees itself as separate. So it's always, here's the biggest key. it always, always, always is fear-based. The ego,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
So my higher self, of course, my higher consciousness, my true self, however you want to define that or say that, all right, is perfectly calm and perfectly connected to whatever it is you believe in terms of a higher power,
Mhm.
right? And that energy moves
Yes,
through you, right? And I'm assuming with horses, I'll take a little trajectory here, that what you're doing with horses is you are allowing that energy to move through your truest self into the healing practices between you and your horse. Is that true?
yes, yes. It is truly a divine experience that I want all of my students to feel, because when you get to that place, you are out of the ego, you are out of the fear, you are out of the insecurity, because you are one with another being in the purest sense of everything we're talking about, of that spiritual awakening, of that spiritual presence, of that spiritual moment or in time where the level of love and compassion outweighs the care, the interest, the focus on your horse. You're not thinking about it. It just takes you out. The chakra work that I teach you takes you out of yourself, out of the ego and into the other being's beingness. And the horse is there. They get that. And that's when that true connection happens. And you see it, you feel it. One of my students who I'll see on Friday for lessons, Emily, was explaining this moment of oneness that she felt just recently with her horse. And we're going to talk more about it in our Q&A on Friday. But yeah, it's when you practice this enough of the consciousness that you're talking about in the cognitive connecting the dots, so to speak, because you do have to conceptually think about this. That's where reading and studying and learning from a master like yourself or others in books or me in a different way is fantastic, but then you need to apply it. How do you practice this? And the horse, to me, is the most honest and caretaking being I've ever been around, more than my dogs and my cats and a human. I haven't worked with other intelligent sentient beings, other species, other than the horse specifically in this way. And the level of care, compassion, understanding, holding the space, understanding where you are and wanting to connect with you in that place is so powerful and amazing. It is an experience that truly, let me get my mom. Hold on for a second. There she goes. Yeah, taking care of my mother, who truly, it's an experience like no other. If it's so hard to try and do this by yourself is the point I'm making. Even if you're in therapy, it's so hard to get out of your ego in your head, but to work with an honest being that is able to appreciate, for the lack of a better word, what we're talking about, just because it's so innate to them. It's so innate to the horse. They are so powerful. It is unbelievable. I'm sorry, I could talk forever about it. They are just the most amazing creatures. I could cry every day. I could cry right now. I'm so humbled and honored to have this ability to be with horses like this. It's amazing, you guys.
It is amazing. And I think that our experiences are very similar. You described it so beautifully. The difference with me is I've not practiced being present with the horse who has that innate ability. I work with human beings. And when you sit still and do your own work prior to sitting with a human being, right? It's the same. I suspect you understand what I mean. It's almost like a fugue state. It's almost like you're moved to a different state of being
Yes.
with someone. And that calls to their higher self. Yes. So
Yes.
higher
Yes.
self to higher self. And the ego, we can recognize it if we move into that state and say, oh, silly little ego.
Yes.
Silly little ego. I see you. But at the
And
same
we need to learn. We need to learn there, Kris. It begins there. You can't, so many of my students just want to learn what I teach and go straight to the horse, but you've got to do the personal work first. You really have to be aware of when that ego checks back in and pushes the higher self out of the way. And it's a humility. Though the best word I can describe is a level of humility that you have to have. You have to surrender. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to go there, because the horse has no ego. I mean, yeah, they got ego a little bit. They can be proud. Legend had ego. That's a whole nother conversation. But they don't have that third lobe, that core, that the thinking ability and the ego like we have. Yeah. So yes, you have to do the work, and that's what you're going to help. I love this. You're going to help all of us understand
well,
how to do the work.
to for one thing that the higher self is not. And then I'm going to move on to, we'll talk a little bit about what I do, and then I want to hear what you do. But it's not the false self. The higher self is not what we call the false self. And that's one way that we can recognize it, because the false self, of course, is our persona. All right. And that's the mask. That's the role that we take out into the world, right? Or the various that we take out into the world. And my higher self can step back and observe those roles. Oh, look at that. Okay. And it's kind of like one practice, if you want to talk about it, is stepping back into the higher self through meditation. And I'll talk more about that later. But what happens is, if I step back into that, I can watch the drama going on outside of me, but I'm not a part of it. But I'll talk more about how one has to connect to that loving source, all right, in order to be a loving presence, right? So lastly, in 12-step philosophy, what we call this higher self is the great reality within. And those of you in 12-step philosophy understand what I mean with that. I won't go into that too much.
Oh, can you speak up just a little bit? Couldn't quite hear that last
Sure.
part.
I was talking about 12-step philosophy, and how in 12-step philosophy, the higher self, the word that we use in the literature, is the great reality within. Great reality within. So those are some ways that we can, because we have to conceptualize, we need to talk, we need to use words. Those are some ways we can explore what this higher self or true self is. So what I practice is what we call a conscious doing. Conscious, right? Some people call it mindfulness.
Yes.
That's okay too. I call it conscious doing, because it
I
doesn't,
love that.
isn't that nice? It doesn't matter so much what I'm doing as the consciousness that I bring to what I'm doing.
Perfectly put. Beautiful.
Okay, so that's a practice every day, conscious doing or mindfulness, whatever you want to call that. I use, and I'm sure you can correct me on this, but this is something I do intuitively. I never was taught. But what I do is I open up the 7th chakra. I sit and I open up the crown. All right. And we all know the crown, okay, is the opening to universal energy, or the source, or the light, or God, or love, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call that force or that energy. So I open that up in meditation, and that allows the inflow of that power, but there's also some outflow, right? and it opens up to the I am, right? Or the higher self and the presence. Now, at that point, we all know that the higher self is the point of contact, right? All right, the higher self is the point of contact with the experience of God or love, whatever you want to call that, or higher consciousness versus egoic consciousness. Okay, so I opened myself up in meditation. I sit still. It's very simple, is it not? Yeah.
Yes.
Very simple, and its point is the stillness.
Yes.
Being in stillness. Be still and know.
So we say it's simple. Hold on for a second. For all of you out there, it is a practice until you can connect to the simplicity of this through, I recommend breath work. I think we all do for most of our deep meditation. And you want to get to a point through the breath work that you get out of your head and into your body, into a somatic experience, what you feel inside as you're breathing. And eventually, when you do this enough every day, multiple times, it can be multiple times. I'm a panic attack survivor. And so this was something I would have to do, oh my gosh, a minimum of 10 times a day back in the day when I was a teenager, very, very young. So the breath helps you focus on the breath work, you focus on how you feel. And a lot of my students have a hard time, getting just to that point, and they give up. And it all I can say is it is a practice. You must make it a mantra. You must make it a practice. It will happen. It will happen.
How beautiful is that you're taking the words right out of my mouth, because it's a simple practice, but it's not easy. Right.
No.
And then you brought in a somatic piece of that, which of course, I had an experience once when I did this, where I sat very simply for 10 minutes and with the meditation on the crown and the inflow of the energy and this universal love, whatever you want to call that energy. And I was sitting still, and it came over me for just a minute, all the way through my body, particular in the heart chakra. My heart opened up. And I had the experience that there's enough love for me and for you. And I was overpowered with the somatic, or the feeling of love. And so this is very powerful. And then, of course, I'm sure you can instruct me more on it. But the other thing I do first is open up my heart chakra. And I actually do some, I have a singing bowl that's that I use, that's designed, it's completely for the heart chakra.
Wow.
Yeah, it's got the same vibration.
Yes. Yes. The tonal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Other practice, I use that, and I can be still, and that'll vibrate with the heart chakra and open me up also. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so for me to relate to that, because I do something similar but different, similar in the vibration, but different. What I teach my students in my big program is the Taoist reverse breath. And there's a lot of different ways of doing the Taoist reverse breath. You can look it up on YouTube. I've taken the mainframe of, so to speak, of that exercise and partnered it, so to speak, with where I believe we need to be to do this work with our horses. And in this work, we will heal ourselves. So I define the way in which you go through the exercise of the breath, the breathing, as if you are, especially your fourth chakra in your diaphragm. And of course, this is going to affect your throat chakra, which is beautiful, but it's like taking a very tight, and I'm going to say it like this, leather jacket that you zip up. And as you're bringing the air and the breath up, it can tighten, and you're tightening the zipper and you're pulling it up, and it feels so good and snug feeling. I want you to visualize that, what that feels like. And if you can't, then do it with a jacket that's really tight. And then as the air is coming down, the jacket is being unzipped and you're pulling that open. You're pulling that space wide open for the release of that energy and that power and that feeling of the fourth chakra. And it's amazing when my students can practice this correctly, because they start crying. And I always say, if I don't make you cry in my work, I have not done my work. I have not done my job. You and I are not done. Because it's all this trapped emotions within the fifth. I'll even include the fifth chakra down to the first. And you're not even aware that you've been suppressing it and holding it within for so long. And that's why I call my work organic and subconscious, because it isn't something that it's hard to talk about. It's like you and I said in the very beginning, spirituality in the journey, but I know how to apply the tactile and the tangible so that it becomes a real somatic experience that is tangible. It's so powerful. Holy cow.
It is, and very difficult to describe for me, the power. Yeah, it's
and the healing power, for yourself. Yeah, it's in my experience with the horses as my co-facilitators in my work with myself, or work with them, or work with people, whoever needs the work. And I love to do it with my herd of horses, because we are all at different places in this healing process, and some are healed, and they are the ones that will hold that space energetically. And as a group, the few that are there will hold that space, or find that student. Lydia's experienced that. Find the student that needs, wherever they are, the horse gravitates like a magnet to that student and offers them. It's always in a form of holding the space. It's never quite, it's engaging, but the horse is engaging it where you need, on a subconscious level. It's never like where our ego needs, like I want to accomplish this, or I want this to be fixed. The horse is just working right where they know you need the work done the most, which is never where we think. It's really powerful. I'm sure I can speak for anyone out there that works with horses in this way, in a healing way. We've all experienced it. It's pretty powerful.
very much so. And one of the things that I've noticed in my work is, of course, I use EMDR.
Yes.
If that's something someone wants to do, but
Can you explain that, Kris, what that means?
EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And it's an adaptive informational process. And I won't go into that too much, but what it does is, if you're working with a person and you've sat still with them long enough, and you're being still, and they're connected through that seventh chakra, or even the heart chakra. And we do bilateral stimulation, which is moving from the left brain to the right brain, left brain to the right brain, using eye movement. What happens is, that person, I've witnessed people move into spiritual experience with the higher self in front of me. Oh, for whatever, I see the angels are here.
Wow.
So through, like you were saying, the somatic work, focusing on those chakras, okay, and using bilateral stimulation, like notice your heart, because they will oftentimes point to the heart as the center of where the pain is.
Yeah.
Okay, So through EMDR, what we can do is release the pain. Oftentimes there's a lot of crying, of course, and in that release, but also move them into a different state of consciousness whereby they have mystical experiences, basically.
Hmm.
And so I've seen that happen many, many, many times. But I think, like you're saying, we have to do the work to be present to that work.
To connect to it. Absolutely. To connect and allow it to open up to that possibility. Yes, I've had a handful, not very many students that just could not connect to that or open up and get frustrated, of course. And the ego comes in, and then it's either my fault or the horse's fault, or this isn't right for me. So that happens too.
Yes, it does. So if we make them aware of that, right, and watch the ego, that's
Yeah.
something that can help. But anyway, talk some more about some other practices. That's the most profound that I use. But another one that I love, I actually got from Ram Dass. And Ram Dass is so simple. I just love him. And what he does, and I've been using it now every day for, I don't know how long now. But when I find myself moving into, how do I say it, the drama of the world, okay, or I find myself immersed in something, and I sit and I be still and know, and then I affirm that I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. That's who I am. I'm loving awareness. And that affirmation, all right, along with opening yourself up, okay, to the the higher self and the energy of the higher power, okay, whatever that is. Affirming I am loving awareness reminds me, okay, it's like a reminder. All right, so that's something I do. That's kind of my mantra. Now, the other thing I use a lot, and I'm sure you guys do this, is ritual. Ritual. And particularly at this time of the year, we're all involved in rituals at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to talk more about the meaning. How does the higher self play into this Christmas phenomena?
Mm.
Okay. I'll talk about that later. But I light a candle when I sit down, of course, whenever I'm doing my work with people. But I light a candle because it represents the presence to me.
Oh, I like that.
It helps with the container, the healing container that we bring to people, but it also reminds me I'm not the one doing the work.
Okay.
That the work is moving through me, right?
So you're channeling it. So the candle, hold on, the candle, great metaphor. Excuse me, I'm eating a Pez. Sorry, my candy of choice. So the candle is a great metaphor for the divine light, and
Yes.
it's creating space mentally and visually for you to channel your higher self, correct?
Correct. Thank you so much for explaining.
Wow. Oh, I have goosebumps on that.
Mhm. It's a small ritual. I've used it for years, but I don't sit down to do my work without a candle burning.
Oh, wow.
I need the reminder, and I need the reminder of the presence and how the presence works through me, that I'm not doing the work, but I'm being used to do the work. And the higher self, of course, is aligned with, and when I look through the eyes of the higher self, that's another practice, is there's a certain prayer, if you like prayer, where I ask higher power or the higher self that I might look at the world through the eyes of the higher self, that my hands might be used for the healing, that my feet might be in right action and aligned with that higher self. So
Oh, I
there's
like that.
Yeah, there's lots of things we can do when we sit down with the
Mhm.
at Christmas time, of course, depending on whether or not you are a practicing Christian or not, there's certainly things you can put on your altar to
Yes.
bring into the Christmas spirit.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
people are putting something different on their altars at Hanukkah. But this creates what I'm doing for me. If this is my work environment or just my personal environment, and this is my meditation room, this is where I'm sitting. I'm creating a holy space
Yes.
or a holy place. And so I'm bringing in that word holy now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is really different. The other thing I need, of course, is a regenerating practice. All right. For me, of carving out.
Yes, very important.
Yep. And you talked about this before, you just made reference to it, Caroline, but this is not something I do just in the morning. I have to consciously throughout the day, all right, be silent.
Yes.
And of course, where do we find that loving presence that moves through us, but here now, right here now. And I have to, like you were talking about, I have to pull in the body sometimes, okay, and do grounding. All right, I ground myself in Mother Earth, just ground myself.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
aligns all those chakras, right? And
Yes.
that's where you find presence is only here now.
Hmm.
You cannot find presence or God or whatever you want to call that anywhere but here now. So I
Yes.
stop during the day when I'm feeling tired or whatever it might be going on. And I bring in the power and the strength, right? By being in the silence and being here now. Practice being here now. All right.
Yes.
And I know nowadays.
Practice being in the now, being in the moment, being in the moment. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I know today that's kind of pop. You hear a lot about that, but I'm talking about something different. Stress is caused, and particularly this time of the year, by being here, but wanting to be there. Okay.
Mhm.
What stress is. So I need to be here now, and there's no problems here right now.
Hmm.
There's nothing right now. There's no problems right here now. All of us sitting here right now in this moment, we don't have any problems.
That's right.
No, right here now. So I practice that a lot. And then this time of the year, I reflect on the true meaning of the season.
Hmm.
Oh, I do a lot of reflection. All right.
Yeah.
And I think that is a higher consciousness when we get into the reflection of the true meaning, right? So
Yes.
those are some things we do, only some, but I think the most difficult practice is sitting in the higher self and being here now and looking at your thoughts as just thoughts. Just thoughts. And watching emotions come and go, because of course they come and go. I was always afraid they were going to stay forever.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sometimes they feel like they're staying a little longer than you want them to. That's for sure. We all go through that. So go
Exactly.
back to meditation.
Well, I resist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to
Or
do
we
it.
push through it. Or we just push through it.
Yep, exactly. And I need to just relax into it.
Mm-hmm.
Relax into the emotion, relax into it. But most importantly, see thoughts for what they are. Just thoughts. So when you watch your thoughts, you go, oh, look at that. It's what I'm what ifing. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that? There's the mind going into the future, and the mind,
Yes.
I call it the little mind,
Yeah.
because it's not, okay, that's all it is. And then sometimes it goes past,
Mm-hmm.
but it's in the future and it's in the past, and it's just thinking. It's just thinking. So what I had to learn to do was step back into my higher self through meditation and watch my thinking, just
Yes.
like the clouds going by. So when you do that, what the masters say is you create the gap, what they call the gap.
Mm.
And you're stepping back into who it is you actually are, and you're watching this like it's on some kind of a rolling tape. Just watch.
Screen. Yeah.
You create
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And where are you sitting but in the wisdom?
Mm. Hmm.
That's who you actually are, is wisdom. So you watch your thoughts, and if you practice that long enough, you will experience the gap or the peacefulness that comes with sitting still in your higher self and in your wisdom. Wisdom's
Mm.
different than thought,
Mm.
chatter.
That is powerful. That is so powerful.
That's what he meant from the higher self, is a wisdom. And you will notice that. I think you just described it really well yourself. Yeah.
Yes. And I've lost some of that wisdom myself, being so burnt out, doing so much the last few years. And I'm working on capturing that. But, that's the most beautiful thing that the breath work and the meditation was able to give me as a teenager suffering from acute panic attacks, was that gap. I've never heard it put so eloquently as you just did, but that space where you're not attached to your thoughts, because those thoughts were creating my freezing and my panic attacks. So it was those emotions and those thoughts, and they overwhelmed me, and then it makes. And it's so interesting because as an adult that's worked through that level or layer of self-work for myself, we continue to grow and evolve. And with that comes different challenges. And I'm finding myself needing to get back to just doing that work in that way that worked. And, I haven't given myself permission or time to take that level of self-care. And you've just reminded me just now what an aha, how powerful it is. And it seems so simple, you all, but it's, if you just take your own advice or the advice of what you just recommended, it is, and I am going to go back to really carving out quiet time and doing the deep meditation again that I have not done in such a long time.
Yeah,
Wow. Thank you for that. Oh my, what a gift. Thank you.
well, now that we all go through those times that you're describing, I've gone through those times, and that's human nature.
Yeah.
That's about honoring, I think, our humanness.
I guess so.
The way that I move in and out of this consciousness. But as time goes on, I know what the answer is. All right. Just whether or not that part of me is going to get away from the television or whatever the distraction is. Right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
we have a lot of distractions. And of course, in this season, it's the worst in the Christmas season, the distraction.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
We have a lot of invitation to get into the commercialization of Christmas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I'm going to
The
talk about
competition of Christmas. I used to be there in so many different ways, you guys. So yeah, it's tough. You got to really be conscious and aware of those pitfalls.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, we were talking earlier about what are the benefits when of immersing yourself in spirit and doing this work and connecting with our higher selves, however you want to frame that. Obviously, there's simple repercussions, there's simple benefits from that. There's joy, true joy.
Yeah.
I hear you describe that all the time in your when you're there in your relationship with your horses. Joy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Joy from a spiritual center, not what we call happiness, whatever that is. Okay. It's joy. Obviously, there's peace and there's serenity,
Mm-hmm.
there's calm.
Contentment. I love that word. Being content in the moment, being content in the experience, not wanting for more.
Yes. Just now, and knowing you have enough.
Yes. Yes.
That I am enough and there's enough.
Oh, that's been a huge struggle for me personally, all of my life until recently. I've mentioned that on other podcasts, just recently being like 7 years ago, getting that taste and that glimpse and that experience of being content. Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Well, at my age and all the years that I've practiced, I find that there is wisdom, not just because there's life experience, but because there's practice at dealing with life experience.
Yes.
Right. So what I found for me, I'm turning 70 this year.
Unbelievable. You look amazing.
Oh,
my God.
well, thank you. But I'll be 70 this month. And the reason I bring it up is because the 70s, as you move through development as a woman, women's spiritual development, in your 70s, you're redefining yourself again. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Redefining yourself again because you've let go of so many rules. And when you let spirit move through you and guide you on that path, the most incredible things start to happen because you can combine it with life wisdom. So I just bring that up for any of you who are my age. I doubt it, there are a lot, but
is that why people get divorced in their older age?
Exactly. Exactly.
It's either midlife crisis or older.
Exactly. Yeah, because you're not who you once were, right, Lydia?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're a different. Yeah. You're not the 20-year-old or the 30-year-old who was operating out of that level of consciousness, making those decisions.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Real quick, I'm going to add to all of us out there that have been married more than once, and some of us several times. And I'm not making an excuse, but there's quite a few of us that evolve. And you just said it. And as you evolve, it's like, friendships and relationships in life come for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. Yep. And I don't go into marriage thinking that this is, I hope, I don't even like that word. I just don't put it up. I don't put marriage in a box saying, well, I hope we're married for the rest of our lives. Yeah, that'd be beautiful. I think I know we put on relationships, especially marriage, so many restrictions and expectations. And of all the clients I've worked with, and it's been thousands, very few are truly happy, and very few have been able to have a 30, 40, 50-year relationship. And marriage, I'm not saying it comes and goes. There's ebb and flows for years. I'm not afraid of working on myself. I'm not afraid of working on my marriage. But I mean, when you really hit that space where you're like, wow, I love you. I love who you are, but this just isn't who I am anymore. It's just not working out. Not making excuses for anything. I'm just putting it out there. It's just stuff to think about, a lot of stuff to think about.
Well, my experience personally and in watching others, particularly women, there's a grief associated with our transformative experience. In other words, as we transform, sometimes, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, but our partners are no longer like-minded.
Yeah.
And
yes,
very sad thing, because we're transforming and moving forward, and maybe they're not.
yes, I've been there.
Yeah.
Yep. And I used to say 15 years ago when that happened in my first marriage, it was devastating for so many different reasons that we're talking about. But at the same time, the death of my marriage was the birth of me. It was the rebirth of me. And it was so sad that we had a 15-year friendship and love and commitment. And we definitely were growing apart. We had different needs. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I've
It
had
happens.
when once I left my best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I left my best friend, and it was really, really, really sad, but I was moving on. I was transforming, and I was different, and I needed different things in my life, and this person
Yes.
over here needing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Back to benefits. My favorite one is if we practice this, I am loving awareness and complete recognition of who I am, and moving from that healing space, I become non-reactive versus reactive. I'm no longer empowered by the world and its events, because it's just a life situation. And I can be proactive from that higher self. And I'm not that ego who's reacting to everything all the time. Oh, this, yeah. I have a mindfulness about how I'm going to act.
Yes.
And it's not hard thought. I'm not working on it. It's moving through. Does that make sense?
Good. It does. It makes sense to me. And I can be reactive. That's still a definite work in progress where I'm aware that I'm attached to, my emotions are attached to an expectation or a situation, expectation mostly, if I'm correct. But that is definitely the moving through. If you all are out there wondering, well, what are you talking about? Well, that's what we were talking about in the very beginning of this podcast, is how you allow that energy to come through you, to open yourself up through your chakra system, is what we're talking about. And allowing that light, that energy, that divine, that higher self through meditation come through you. You have to open yourself up to feel that energy come through you, to feel that feeling come through you, that knowing, that intuition, that guttural, that sense, that inner knowing. And it is a feeling, we're trying to describe it, but it when you have it. But you've got to practice to open yourself up to receive it. So yeah.
Absolutely. So well put. I really love that. I'm just kind of do this so that we can get into Christmas, because I know we're running out of time, aren't we?
We're okay. Don't worry.
Okay. So obviously, when we're in that place, we're empowered from the right kind of power. Versus if I'm not there, I'm going to lose self, which is the big S. I'm going to get from it, and I'm going to move into ego. And it's always the ego that's reacting to things, because the ego takes,
Yes.
remember, ego takes everything personally. And I've
Yes.
me, and I still fall back into that.
Yep. Oh, yeah, me too. Me too. Mm-hmm.
Strength, we get strength. What I mean by that is the energy that moves through us gives us strength to move forward, even gives us strength in our body. Hope, wisdom, and love.
Mm-hmm.
Just some little things like that.
They're not little. Loves, oh, they're huge. Mm.
Okay, you want to talk about Christmas?
Yes, ma'am. You don't you be stressed by time. We can have all the time we need.
All right, well, I can keep it
Mhm.
short too. I was giving this some thought. And the first thing, of course, people think about, and you mentioned this earlier, at Christmas or the holiday season, it triggers people.
Mhm.
And I think we need to be conscious of the triggers. And oftentimes, like you said, there's been losses. So there's thoughts of the past. Somebody's not present that used to be present. Thoughts of the past are pretty typical.
Yeah.
So what it does is it's a time for healing.
Mm.
I think Christmas is a time for healing.
No.
And it's also the end of the year. So there's a time to reflect. But what I do is I examine what Tolle calls the pain body. All right. What kind of pain am I holding on to in my body?
Mhm.
All right. And then, of course, we have to examine our thoughts. All right. But whatever healing work we do, all right, to deal with a pain body, it's a good time to do it, because not only personally, the collective consciousness of the world at Christmas can be a space for healing, because most people are moving into or being asked to move into a different level of consciousness at Christmas.
Yes.
Okay. So I want non-resistance of these thoughts and emotions that might be coming up, and the pain maybe in the body where it's centered. It might be in the heart, might be somewhere else. But I want to surrender consciously the pain from the I am. Surrender consciously to the pain with self-compassion, compassion for self. Because we all know that when we are in line energetically, all right, with a loving presence, one of the things we get is compassion for ourselves as we watch this process and cooperate with it would be a good word, I guess. Right?
Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
Cooperate with the healing and
Yes.
let go. But that's a
Mm.
process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Christmas in the collective consciousness is oftentimes people are raised up in consciousness. So it provides in the collective, it's like we're all doing this together.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful time for that. I'm going to read something.
Yes.
I don't know any of you. The only reason I'm reading this is because I found it more fitting than anything I've read to describe the higher self and how that's related to the Christmas season. So I'm going to read something, a couple things, but the first thing
Okay.
I read is from the Course in Miracles, and I'm not promoting the course. I'm just using the course as something that I feel expresses how the higher self is, how do I want to say this, immersed, and how the higher self, Christmas can be a metaphor for the rebirth of the higher self.
Mm.
So I'm going to talk about that a little bit and let you think
Okay.
on that and see if that's true for you. But I'm going to read this. This is from the course. Out of this Christmas season, a new year will be born. Out of this holy instant, a new world will be born. Even though the infant within us will be small and vulnerable, she will carry within herself all power, all miracles that we one day perform. And what I heard in that was, of course, the metaphor of the baby Jesus, whether or not you're Christian or not, doesn't matter, or the Christ, the baby, and how that exists within us. All right.
Yes.
The birth of Christ is metaphor for the birth of the Christ within us. And this just
Yes.
talks about the infant, all right, within us, or the child within us, will be small and vulnerable, just as Christ was, all right, at that birth. We too have that Christ being born within us, that Buddha within us, that vulnerable child within us, whatever you want to call it. So that's how I see how the tradition of Christianity, the metaphor of the birth of the higher self, comes into
Yes.
the season.
Yes. Yes. Me too.
Okay,
Beautifully put.
yeah. Also, what the metaphor is coming from darkness or unconsciousness or being asleep to the light and the awakened consciousness. And you can call it a Christ consciousness if you want. A lot of people do. Or the cosmic,
Yes, they do.
right?
Yes.
So it's a God consciousness, however you want to put it. It's a higher power consciousness, however you want to put it. And the birth of Christ, of course, is meaning how we come out of that darkness or unconsciousness and sleepness into the light and awakened consciousness. It's also the birth of holiness within us, and it's supposed to awaken us, I suspect, to our own divinity.
Yes.
And isn't that what Christ said?
Yes. And you guys, if you pray, prayer is a form of meditation. It's all the same. Whether you pray to God or you go deep within and open yourself up to a higher divinity, divine self, but it's that power of prayer that creates that space in so many ways for, it's amazing. I'll just leave it there. The power of prayer, power of meditation is absolutely transformative. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even if you don't think it works, do it anyway.
Yes, do it and do it and do it. It will work.
I'll just sneak in here a form of prayer that I really recommend to people called contemplative prayer. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Thomas Keating, he's a very, very unusual. He was the abbot of the monastery in Boulder, Colorado. Anyway, he's an amazing man. You can read books by Thomas Keating, and he uses a simple form of contemplative prayer, which is actually very ancient. It comes from eons ago, but he's bringing it back into the consciousness of people. And all you do is pick a holy word and you focus on that. So you might say mercy. And when you go flying away, you come back and say mercy.
I have heard of that now.
Yes.
I have now. I understand. Yes, I'm familiar in my readings. Yes. Wow, the power of intention, the power of the mind, the power of focus. Wow.
And the power of connection to your holy word, which brings you back to who it is you actually are.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Mm,
Just add that because you were talking about prayer. But what we want to do in this season is we want to prepare a holy place for the rebirth of ourselves.
mm,
And that means nurturing ourselves. And that's the last thing we do in the season, right? What we do is rush, and react. So I think we have to look at it like we're preparing. You can even look at it like my home today, because this is where I am, is a holy place for the rebirth or the reconnection, however you want to look at that, with my higher self, metaphorically being the birth of Christ. So I'm going to read another thing. This is by Robert.
beautiful. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Good. This is by Robert Perry, and he's a student of the course, but I thought it was so beautiful because he summed it up beautifully. In short, we need to prepare a holy place for the birth of Christ in us. He is alien to this world, to its sights of violence and sounds of war. He is an alien to the battleground of our ego's thoughts.
Mm,
We need to prepare a place in us that mirrors the holiness of where Christ comes from, and therefore provides him with a nurturing environment. We prepare this place by giving over our hate and by releasing all of our brothers and sisters from our demands.
wow.
We prepare it by clearing a space in our mind that is totally empty and quiet, receptive and expectant. We prepare it by fully entering the present moment where Christ is forever being born. We prepare it by entering a holy instant. We may enter this instant in the privacy of our own mind, or we may enter it by joining with a brother or sister through mutual forgiveness. Either way, this is how we make the season holy. This is how we repeat what happened with the original Christmas.
Mm,
Lastly, the sign of in the symbolism of the Christmas star.
mhm.
Isn't that a beautiful thing to think on?
Yes.
It's the light in the darkness. And I can remember as a child looking out my window on Christmas Eve and seeing the bright star. Can you remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, experiencing mystically that connection with the meaning of that, the
Yeah.
light in the darkness, the hope. What else would you add to that? The Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. This is the first year that we have had a star, that I bought a star for our tree. But my husband is amazing. He loves the stars. He loves to go out at night and look at them. And so he'll point out the Christmas star every Christmas for Mason and me. Oh my gosh, the star of hope and light. Yeah, it's beautiful. You take it away. I love it. Of hope and light.
Well, I think that I can end it there. You know, I can go on and on and on. All right. I won't.
Oh, I think this was so beautifully. Thank you, Kris. You are a master at what you do, and we are so blessed. Kris is retiring this year, and we are all so blessed to have had your wisdom. I don't know what to say. Just thank you so much for being a part. And I hope we'll talk more. I hope we can get you a couple more times in your retirement.
I would love it.
To share your breadth of work and wisdom. I love it. I don't know what to say. I'm so honored that you're here. And I know that our audience is going to get so much out of this. It's just beautiful. Beautiful.
So, well, it's been a privilege to be here. Thank you. And I don't know what my retirement's going to look like, but I suspect it's going to be just a little different than what I've been doing the last 45 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I hear so many retired people say they're busier than ever because there's so many things that they get to do that they never got to do before. So wow, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. And who knows what the Holy Spirit will do with me.
Yeah,
I need to
I
stay
love it.
to that. And I'm sure you guys do that. And that's the message of Christmas, hope and expectancy.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Merry Christmas, everyone. This is our last podcast for the year. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We love you. We can't wait to see you in January. God bless. Bless everyone. And thank you, ladies. Love you. Mwah. Namaste. Love to all.
Love you guys.
Bye. See you in
Love
the new
you.
year. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.